So my goal in sharing all of, of running free webinars and things like this is that I'm passionate about impacting society. I want to impact society from every level, the individual, the family, the community. I want to offer hope and courage and solutions and results. I love results. And I believe that if I give freely, it encourages others to give freely, and this will just benefit us at a wider community level. Does anybody agree with me in the value of sharing freely?
Information sharing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you think of anyone that could benefit from some tips on emotional resilience apart from yourself? All right, so one of the reasons for having a notebook with you tonight is so that you can be intentional. Intentional is another one of my favorite words, and I've got about 4 of them. So I've said 2 already. Let's see if I get to the other 2 tonight. So if I say something and it prompts you to think about somebody else, you think, oh, that person, oh, that could really be beneficial. Please write their name down and make a note to just encourage them. You don't have to wait for them to say help. You can just offer. You can just ask. And I would love it if you were confident enough to do that. I think it's really important. So we've run through already tonight. If you want to get my attention, please use the reaction buttons. You can give me a high five or a clap, and that will tell me, stop talking, Amanda. Someone's got a question. As much as possible, we want to limit the time that we just share stories, because that'll just make it a longer night, but there will be opportunities for sharing, and some of the sharing will be in the chat bar. So a bit later I will say to you, hey, can you just pop this into the chat, answer this question and pop it into the chat, and from there we'll have some conversation. So is that good to everybody? Give me a thumbs up if you got that. Awesome. All right. So we've got some specific goals tonight. As I said to you, I'm very results driven. And so I'd just love to share with you the goals of our time together tonight. We want to celebrate. I love celebrating. So we have to take a moment to celebrate our successes. The second thing we want to do is plug the gaps. When all of that I'm talking about tonight, I would love you to be able to be reflecting on your own life and be looking for those little cracks, the little cracks that allow your emotional strength to escape. We want to seal in the cracks, plug up the leaks, so that we can keep our emotional strength and use it where we need to. I see that a lot. I see that people are very aware of strategies, of the importance of emotional resilience, but not everybody is aware that they've got little cracks or gaps and their emotional strength is leaking away and they're not getting full use of their abilities. Secondly, realize your own emotional potential. If all of you are quite familiar with me, and you would have heard me say before, we are capable of more than we know. And I believe that at an emotional level as well, we are capable of more than we know. And I hope that tonight you get a glimpse of something more that you could produce in your own emotional abilities, something more that you could enjoy, that you could use to build your life. And then, of course, we're going to discuss a lot of strategies. And some of those will be really great for you. They'll jump out at you, and others of them won't. So that's what we're doing tonight. Emotional resilience. That's the topic. And you'll see there a definition: one's ability to adapt to stressful situations or crises. That is the most common definition regarding emotional resilience. You'll find it on Google, you'll see it in books, you'll see it in memes, one's ability to adapt to stressful situations or crises. But I actually love this other definition that I've included in the corner there: to cope emotionally and to bounce back stronger, wiser, and more personally powerful. I love that. We're aware that emotional resilience is about adapting and bouncing back, but bouncing back has to look like something. When you bounce back from a situation, what do you want to look like? That's why I love that definition. Because if I bounce back from a challenge or a situation, if I've had to cope emotionally or adapt to a crisis, I want to come back stronger, I want to come back wiser, and I want to come back more personally powerful. That definition is actually written for children, but I believe that adults could use that same focus. So I'd love you just to reflect for a minute and think, when you come out of a challenge, how do you want to look? There's not many of us, so feel free to take yourself off pause and just tell us, how do you want to look when you come out of a stressful situation? How do you want to feel? What do you want others to see in you, and what do you want to enjoy? Is anybody willing to share? Yeah, go, Maria. Just unmute.
Unmute. Victory, coming out the other side of a stressful situation and surviving and looking back and going, wow, that was awesome, you know, like, because you want to, it's,
so you want to
sometimes worse than,
so you want to celebrate the success.
Yeah, that's it, celebrate the success.
I love that. Me too. I love to celebrate successes. I like to celebrate during the journey, multiple times, and at the end as well. Anybody else want to share? Rachel, you're off mute. What do you want to say?
Just, this is a reflection on my work, but for me, sometimes changing the goalposts and finding those successes, but also looking back and then learning from them. So you might have a similar situation in the future, but you've responded in a different way, in a more emotionally resilient way, where it doesn't take you down as well.
Yep.
So I know that I'm a much stronger teacher now, but I've had a few hard years, but I'm able now to deal with it better, and I'm not taking things as personally as I used to. I know that I am okay.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So there's an inner confidence. You want to come back with an inner confidence and appreciation, and to use what you've learned to benefit you. I love that. That's great. Okay, so I know that there's not a person here who has not been through a stressful situation. Is there anybody here? Right. So I'd love you to think about a stressful situation that you've been in. And I would like you to write down some things or to reflect on it. Here's my questions. What did you do well? In that stressful situation, what did you do well? Just write it down. And what do you wish that you did better? That's good, Susie. Just reading your chats.
Sorry, Amanda, I missed it. What were the questions?
So think about a recent stressful situation you've been in, or something from months or years past. Take a minute to think about what you did well. What did you do well in that stressful situation? And what do you wish that you did better in that situation? And just like Rachel mentioned when she shared a bit earlier, what did you learn in that situation? I would love it if everybody felt comfortable to put their answers into the chat. You don't have to tell us what the situation was. You just need to tell us 1 or 2 words. What did you do well?
Okay.
Yep. Don't just, if you
I thought you had to write it down.
Write it down. Yeah, write it down for your own reflection. And then if you are willing to share it with us, pop it in the chat so that we can also have a look, because there could be something that you've done or you've learned through a situation that could just help somebody else, encourage somebody else, or remind them. So I'm going to put some into stress.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
You want my answer?
Yes, you can talk, you can tell us, but we're just taking a minute to put it in the chat. So
okay.
just let everybody have a write, and then we'll hear what your answers are. Sound all right? Yep.
Derek finally fixed the problem.
Awesome. Derek, you are a champion. So what did I do well? What did I wish I did better? And what did I learn? All right. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So Maria, we are similar, because I would have liked to have communicated better. And you said I would have liked to have further discussion. Did well. Listened. Great, Patricia. David kept calm. Yep. Did not think quick enough. Yeah. All right. Yep. Susie, I like that. Avoid the avoidance. Serena, tell us your answers. I'll unmute you to save you another thing to do. Tell us your answers. Oh, no, you're going to have to do it yourself. It's not working for me. All right, try that. No. There you go.
I was just in the middle of writing it. I remained surprisingly calm and didn't lose my cool, but I wished I'd been more confident and less afraid to speak my mind without anger. Does that make sense?
Yep. And what did you learn?
What did I learn? That I can do better.
I love it. I love looking back on those situations. I love remembering the hard times. It's so valuable. And it looks like we've got a lot of strong people. We can all stand strong in the situation. We can all keep our mouths shut and not react. But there's always a flip side, right? And there's a positive and a negative side of every situation. So yes, I actually said that, thinking about when my husband died, we actually had this big celebration of his life. And I said, if I ever have to do that again, yeah, we'll have a celebration of his life, but the first thing I will do is cry my heart out and give myself time to cry, which I did not do. And that was something that I really learned about the importance of speaking in that situation. True. So a lot of us remained calm. Yeah, I love this. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody want to talk about their situation? Does anyone want to share it in more detail? Is that David? Oh, I thought you were going to unmute then, David. All right.
Yeah, I can unmute.
Go on.
Well, I think my situation at the time was not that long ago, really, and that was conflict between staff. And I was saying that I kept calm through it all because they were literally at each other in my office. And it became quite an overwhelming situation. And hence, both of them no longer work for me. But the thing was I was just baffled and even though I kept calm through the whole situation, I really did not know how to handle it, you know. I mean, yeah, so as far as learning, it's starting to happen again between two different people, and now I'm really sort of still keeping calm, but I know how to handle it, you know. So the situation in trying to keep the peace and that sort of thing, and I guess give them some insight into what their actions. So yeah, so it's been a learning curve for me.
Yeah.
Just that conflict resolution and things like that.
So when you went through it the first time, how did you, like you said, you didn't know what to do. So how did you discover what to do? Did you do some training? Did you ask for someone? Did you just think about it? Or?
Yeah, no, I actually spoke to some key HR people and got some insight into the best way to handle the particular situations. I mean, the situation was came to a fight, blows, you know, and I had to sort of step in between. And so I was putting myself in danger as well. So, you know, and although that worked out okay at that time, it could have been quite different.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
So there you've highlighted actually a great skill. Ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with reaching out and asking for help. Yeah, and I believe it doesn't matter how old you are or how experienced you are, there's always an element where you can learn from somebody else's influence. And I actually purposely put myself in situations where I feel intimidated by other people's knowledge or experience, because that's how I grow. So yeah, because I don't want to be in that situation where it could be actually life-threatening and I don't know what to do. So well done. I'm so glad you're here to tell the story.
Welcome.
As you say, it could have gone quite differently. I'd like to show you these photos. And here you'll see photos from 3 different seasons of my life. And there is a reason for this. I'm not just showing you the family photo album, but you'll see over here, I am about 9 years old. And you can see, let me just check this in case it's someone trying to get in. All right, nope, it's my son from his army training. He can wait. So this is me about 9. And if you have a look at our faces, this is my brother who's 2 years older. He's quite a reserved child. And I am very, well, let's just say I was the mischievous one of the family, always acting without thinking, often getting myself in trouble. I blame my red hair totally for that. And one of the things I've had to learn is how to think before I act. But the reason why I'm showing this photo is really because at a young age, I learned to take responsibility for my own emotions. Simply because of that, I got myself in trouble all the time. My parents didn't know what to do with me. And so if I didn't work out how to resolve my strong emotions, I was going to go down the gurgler very fast. And so this is where I learned to pursue a goal. And I became quite outcome focused. This is me in my early 20s or mid 20s, and this is Vietnam. So I was in Vietnam for 6 months. And again, it was a really, all right, we'll get to you in a minute, Maria. It was a really challenging time for me. I was part of a small team living in Hanoi, I lived in a local family's house, and I was working actually in government department. And in my spare time, I was working with orphans. Actually, in the background there is our team leaders. But the truth about this situation was that it was extremely isolating, and the team had a lot of disunity. But I was trapped. I had nowhere to go. I had nobody to assist me. Letters weren't coming through. In those days, there was no internet. If you talked on the phone, you had people listen. You know, the local government was listening to your phone call. I was actually under house arrest for 3 days while I lived in Hanoi, and nobody from my team came and rescued me. It was actually one of my students. When I didn't turn up for class for 3 days, one of my students, who was a government official, got on his little scooter and came and rescued me like my prince on a white horse. And he resolved this whole under house arrest situation. So I loved this opportunity because it really built strength in me. I learned to fight for what I want. I learned to be clever and not forceful. I guess this is probably one of the places where I learned that ability to hold on to a truth until exactly the right moment, and not just blurt out things because I felt they needed to be fixed or needed to be said. Over here, this is actually the year before my husband passed away. And so this is my late husband, and these were my children at that age. And by now, we were just entering into his 5th cancer battle. You can see that I was not looking after myself. Physically, I could not look after myself. I had so much to do with looking after this particular man and these special, you know, this whole precious family of mine. I was very strong by this stage in emotional health, but I was very poor in my physical health. Not that I was sick all the time, I wasn't, but I did have a mental breakdown about 2 years before this photo was taken. But I'm showing these 3 photos for a reason. And one of the reasons why I'm sharing it is because you have to start somewhere. I don't believe you should ever feel guilty about where you're at. Just start somewhere, wherever you're at, whatever age you are. I love to tell people, as I said, I love to deliver hope, and I love to tell people there's always a way forward. When things seemed impossible, I can tell you that in this family, as I was growing up, I felt totally rejected by my family. I thought for the first 10 years of my life that I was adopted because I was so different from my well-behaved brother, and my parents just didn't know what to do with me. And I seriously thought I didn't belong. I was the only redhead for 3 generations, and blue eyes, and they all had dark hair. So you know what they said in those days? It must have been the milkman. And I didn't know what the milkman had to do with it, but I was pretty sure I must belong to him. So I had to start somewhere as a child with my limited understanding to support my own emotions. Here, I put myself, because of my risk taking, I put myself in a very vulnerable position. There was that time where I thought I might be shoved over the border into China and left to die in the freezing cold. But I learned through this time, you got to just start somewhere. I didn't give up. I didn't throw a tantrum. As David said, I reached out for the help that I could get, and I spent a lot of time in reflection and a lot of time in my own personal development. Over here, I accepted that life would be out of balance for a while. I didn't know how long that would be. I did everything to care for myself that I could during that time, but I accepted that I couldn't have perfection, and I chose to let my physical health go. My husband died in January. I took my kids off to a holiday in Malaysia. And my parents, we went on a family holiday and saw his family. And then I came back and I hit the gym. And I started my own journey back into wellness. So I guess what I'm saying is you've got to start somewhere. And tonight we're not talking about life balance. I feel we don't have to be terrified that things are out of balance. I'm not coping because I must be doing this and I should be doing this. And I really love to say, hey, can you please take the words should and must out of your vocabulary? And let's say, what can I do? This is what I can do. That's really so much more powerful. When I say should and must, I actually bring guilt into my life. I bring pressure into my life. I'm not a fan of should and must, though I lived by those words for about 20 years of my life. Oh, well, maybe 30. So that's why I'm sharing those. Oh, okay. You're right, Maria. You found the photos. Oh, you can't see them. You probably need to scroll. Scroll on your screen. Yep, if you keep scrolling, you're going, because you'll need to see that all of, have you found it?
People.
Sorry?
You can only see, when I scroll, I can see Patricia, Serena, David, Suzanne's, Rachel.
Can you keep going?
No, that's it. That's all. It's not showing me anything.
All right, well, I can't help you at this end. All I can say is you'll have to listen really carefully because you don't get to see the pictures.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
Maybe she could try minimizing us up
yes.
Like I have you all up the top and I can see your pictures. I don't know if that helps.
If you can find a button to minimize, then you may get access to the screen. Are you on an iPad, Maria?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So then I'm not able to help. Does anybody have advice for iPads?
Yeah, you didn't appear.
Susie.
It's coming up on mine. There's a couple of buttons on the left-hand side at the top, Maria.
On the top, on the left-hand side?
Oh, the right-hand side.
On the left-hand side of your screen as you're looking at it. Or if you have a look at the top on the right-hand side, there's the stop video. Have you got that switched off? You have mute, stop video, share content, participants. Excuse me.
Yeah, so that stops your own video. That doesn't involve the screen sharing. How about we just keep going? And
yeah, you're right.
If you're playing,
I'll have a look in the meeting settings.
Yeah, okay. And if you disappear, just jump back in, and we'll add you back in.
Yep, that's all right.
All right. So for the next 3 slides, we're going to be talking strategy. And what I would love us to do, as we're talking strategy, I would love you to give yourself a score for these things. So say number 1 is, you know, I just don't do this. I've never heard of it before. I've never seen it. I just don't do it. Number 10 is, I nailed this. This is my automatic go-to. I do this automatically and I never need to be prompted. I'm good at this skill. So as we discuss these different strategies, I'd just love you to give yourself a score from 1 to 10. Is that all right? Okay. I'm all about response. So not at all about information. Great. Thank you. Love the thumbs up. Thank you so much. All right. So, if I accept that no matter what season of life I'm in, no matter what stage I'm in, no matter what age I am, I can always do something about my life. I can always do something about my own emotional resilience and my emotional strength. That means that I live with intention. And intention is one of my favorite words. So part of living with intention involves these 2 words, attunement and scaffolding. And attunement. This is intentional listening. I love attunement. I built my life around this. I've built my relationships around this. There's been times where I've had nobody to talk to. I've carried a lot of weight and needed a lot of strength. And therefore, I was my own listener. And so I developed the skill of attunement. Scaffolding, scaffolding is so much fun. Yes, reflecting on our current position, 100%. Yep. So scaffolding, if you're looking at a building, have you seen scaffolding around buildings? So the nature of scaffolding is so that the workers can access building or repair on the building. And we do exactly the same on our lives. We build scaffolding so that we can access building or repairing in our lives. And these two things significantly contribute to our emotional resilience, our ability to bend to a crisis, to adapt, and to bounce back. How we bounce back is up to us, but these two things are very important. So I'm going to discuss each one in detail. So let's talk about attunement. And these things here, this is where I would love you to start giving yourself a score. So attunement involves intentional listening. It's not waiting until you have an eruption and then going, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was so upset about that. Or I had no idea I was scared of that until I broke down in tears. That's not intentional listening. Attunement is having your ears turned on all the time. They're your inner ears. They're regulating your emotions. They're regulating your mental chatter, listening to your body to see how your body reacts. Are your shoulders tense? Is your brain whirring at 100 miles an hour? Do you feel sleepy, exhausted? Do you feel teary, emotional? Intentional listening is about being aware of yourself all the time. And that takes practice. So how would you grade yourself from 1 to 10 on attunement? Can you pick yourself up a couple of seconds after you've had a reaction to something and know and recognize that you had a reaction? Or is it at the end of the day? You sit back at the end of the day and you think about the day, you're cooking dinner, you're having a glass of wine, you think, yeah, that situation, you know, with that colleague or with my child, that really threw me, or I didn't have a response to that. So you are good at listening to yourself, but you process it a little bit later. There's more than one way to do it. How well do you do that? I want to make sure I keep to my notes. So if you see me looking down, I just want to make sure I don't go off track. Intentional listening includes the second one, listening to the whole person. So that means physically listening to your physical body. One of the most fantastic things I learned through my husband's cancer journeys was that nobody knows your body like you do. Nobody. And I became very attuned to my physical body. A headache would mean this. Swelling in my feet might mean that. Weariness in my body, hyper energy. I knew what each one of those things told me was happening, how I was reacting to a situation or to a conversation or just even to my own fears and thoughts. So I became very tuned to my physical self. I actually spent 3 years wellness coaching, and in that wellness coaching, one of the most primary things I did was to teach people how to listen to their own body. We can do that at a very fine level, and it saves us from great physical disaster, I would say. Once I actually damaged my knee. You know what happened? I got cocky. Things were good. I'd been a widow for a few years. I dropped about 20 kilos of weight. I was hustling in on the big guys at gym. I thought I was so awesome, this middle-aged woman. Excuse me, guys, I need the bigger weights. Just watch me. It's my turn. And I actually injured my knee through my pride. So one time where I didn't listen to my physical body, and it cost me 2 years of recovery. And now, to this day, I can't lift heavy weights anymore. It changed my whole ability to do the things that I loved. So I highly recommend developing this attunement at a physical level. And it can be things like even hiccups and as I said, swelling, sweating, all of these physical things. And it doesn't just have to be about emotions, but about what you eat, the kind of activities that you do. So what about your thoughts? Listening intentionally to your thoughts. Now, you may get good at listening to your thoughts as you go along. If you're good at multitasking, you can listen to your thoughts while you're talking, while you're driving, that's pretty rare to be able to identify what's happening in your brain while you're multitasking. So do you take time to sit and listen to your thoughts at least once a day? I've worked with clients whose marriage was failing, and all I got them to do was sit down for 10 minutes a day in a quiet space, not together, separately, and listen to their thoughts and hear and recognize what their mind was focusing on. And that saved a marriage. I thought it was going to get much more complicated than that, but that was it. It's just so they weren't aware of what they were thinking. And the best thing about being aware of what you were thinking is going, no way, am I really thinking that? That is stupid, or that is unnecessary, or that is hurtful, or where did that come from? That's one of the best things that come from listening to your thoughts. Of course, the other side of the good thing is, yeah, I'm going somewhere with this. I'm thinking of, I had a young guy with me today, he's about 20, and to teach him about dreaming, I'm astounded. I'm sorry for him. He's been so gung-ho and do things, suck it up and get it done, that he has not ever had learned the skill of dreaming. He has no idea what he could dream of, what would delight him, what he would enjoy. I said to him, life is about enjoyment. You were designed, you were created to enjoy your life. He said, no way. You got to work, and then you get paid, and then you have a weekend off, and then you go back to work. I said, well, come see me when you're 40 and tell me how that's working out for you. So listening to your thoughts, emotions, being emotionally aware, all right, and spiritually. Now, I love to bring up this concept of listening to yourself spiritually, and I'm not advocating any particular belief system. But a part of spirituality is being aware that you are a spiritual being, and part of being spiritual is knowing your identity, knowing who you are, knowing what you are made for, and knowing where you belong. Those things are really valuable. So even before we would ever have a discussion about traditional belief systems or the various belief systems that are offered to us in our world, I think it's really valuable to plant yourself and know what you know about yourself. And tonight, when I'm discussing these things, I'm just giving you the basics. We could spend about 4 hours just on these things alone, actually breaking them apart, giving demonstrations, practicing it. All right. So humility and vulnerability. How would you score yourself? The reason why I've got humility and vulnerability is because together they produce honesty. If you're going to listen to yourself, you need to be honest. Humans are so good at deceiving themselves. Who agrees with that? Right? We can tell ourselves anything. But if we use humility and vulnerability, then we find freedom in honesty. And it's one of the commitments that I made to myself when I got rid of the should and the must. I carried a lot of weight. I carried a lot of people's burdens. I held up, at that time, several hundred people, their emotional well-being, their spiritual well-being. They were coming to me for practical help. I was supporting people who were below me, as in I was a leader of those people, but I was also supporting my leaders. And I learned, and I have now value on humility and vulnerability. I will never compromise those things because I never want to be a leader that covers up my humanity. I'm a very transparent person, and I don't apologize for that. It rescues me again and again. I hurt my knee because of pride. Imagine what I could do to my life if I lied to myself and lied to others about where I'm really at. You can't ask for help if you're busy hiding and covering up. So when you've listened to all of that, when you've been intentional, when you've listened to the whole person and you've used humility and vulnerability, you need to confirm it. Because again, our mind is so creative. We can miss the gaps. This is where plugging in the gaps comes in, identifying where leaks are happening. We need to confirm it. So for example, we can observe ourselves. We can intentionally put ourselves in situations where we know we might see the worst of ourselves, and we can try it and see what happens. But if that sounds a bit scary, and it's not always recommended, we can just have a simple conversation with somebody who values us. That is so simple and yet so powerful. But I've seen people, they can tell me, they're listening physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. They're like the most attuned person you've ever met, and all of it is a deception. And they're just telling themselves lie after lie after lie. I've seen that a number of times, in fact, and I always call it. You can imagine that I'm not very popular in those situations. But I would rather you and me, yes, we become very clever with masks. So true. So to confirm it actually helps us to grow from it. When we're talking about plugging in the leaks, when we're talking about bouncing back, a better, stronger person, confirming it is really valuable. And once we've confirmed it, it's really good to record it. We don't have to record it. This is not about judgment. This is about growth. So when we are attuned to our bodies, I'm not just talking about where we are weak, but I'm also talking about where we are strong. It took me many years to learn to celebrate my strengths. I could tell you all of my faults. Is anybody like that? It's so easy to recognize faults, but it's much harder to celebrate my strengths, right? And so it's so fantastic to record it. I love to write it down. This is my goal. I'm going to overcome being bossy. I was so bossy. Like, if you think I'm straight and bossy now, you should have seen me 15 years ago. It was embarrassing. If you do personality profiling with the DISC, I was a choleric melancholy. So I saw all the details and I was always right. So I had to put signs up around the house to remind me to say thank you to my husband, to stop and pause and reflect, to celebrate achievements. And I learned there the value of recording it. This is what I want to grow into my life. I'm going to write it down and I'm going to share that with somebody else. And this is what I'm good at. I'm going to celebrate it. I'm going to put it on Facebook. I'm going to tell my friends. I'm going to take a photo and send it to my kids and say, guess what? I just nailed. And later, when I feel disappointed with myself, I feel emotionally low, or I might just even feel weary, I can go back to my record of my strengths and weaknesses and I can celebrate what I've achieved. I wish everybody had a little file in their phone, just a notes where you could just stop and reflect on the things that you've accomplished. I just did that. Good on me. And that there was a section where you said, this is my next step. I'm going to grow in this area. This young boy that I was talking with, he made me laugh. We were talking about the 4 areas of the brain, and he said, I'm really good with making choices. I'm really good at remembering memories. I'm terrible at recognizing my emotions. And I'm not too bad, but I could use some work in the area of my imagination. I was like, man, I'm proud of you. You could recognize, you could actually plot those 4 things and say what, you know, from least to greatest. Good job. Who else could do that? Could you do that? What would you score yourself with recording your strengths, your accomplishments, and writing down weaknesses that you want to recover from 1 to 10? And the last thing is plan from it. The thing about recording it is it keeps us accountable. Something about writing it down, even if we never look at it again, we write it down and something has, I mean, I'm not here tonight to talk about the whole psychology behind it, but it does something in our brain, and that sticks in our brain and it increases our awareness. So we record it and now it's in our awareness, but we don't want to just live with that awareness. We want to plan from it. With my coaching, it's strength-based. So the more you know about your strengths, the better, because we can use your strengths to help you achieve what you want to achieve in your life. And you know those things that are holding you back? If you know your strengths, you can use your strengths to equip yourself through your weaknesses so that they can grow too. And when people have barriers, I find that if you know what your strengths are and you focus on your strengths and your plan, what you want to accomplish, those barriers, those impossible things, they just roll right off your back. I've been watching that happen for the last 13 years of coaching. That's why I love it so much. So how would you score yourself in planning? And again, we haven't talked tonight about how to plan. There's 100 different ways to do that. You could plan, you could do a simple plan like a vision board. You could do a more complex plan by using SMART goals. I preferably love to use dumb goals and SMART goals. Who's ever heard of dumb goals? Some of you have. If you've done a course with me, you've heard me talk about dumb goals. I love them. They're about dreaming big. So, Maria, did you find the pictures? Yes. All right, good. So that means you can see the list. Have you scored yourself on those 6 points? Intentionally listening, the whole person. Honesty, which is humility and vulnerability. Confirming it, recording it, and planning from it. Is there any one of those areas that you've got questions on? If you have, just unmute yourself.
Amanda, I'm unclear on the confirm it portion.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the easiest way to confirm it is to talk to somebody who values you. And if somebody values you, they don't have to be your best friend. It may be a colleague. It may be someone professional like me, you know, like a coach. You can say, I just love one session to sit down and talk with you about this or confirm this. This is what I feel about myself. This is what I see about myself. As I'm listening to myself, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, this is where I see the gaps and this is where I see the strength. What do you see? The easiest way is a conversation, but not with someone who doesn't care about you. Does anybody want to add to that? Is there any other ways you can think of to confirm what you see in yourself?
What I'm going through this year with my work is that I'm not feeling valued at my work. So it's not a really place where I'm feeling like I'm growing this year. Mm-hmm. So I found value in other places, like small other interest groups. So that's filled my cup a little bit.
Yeah.
In terms of it's not working in that particular situation, but I'm able to help others in a different way.
Okay. Yeah. So again, you know what we were saying before about you just start somewhere. You work with what you've got. So I love that. Okay. So somebody just messaged me, oh my gosh, I just remembered the webinar. Yep. Sorry, guys. Too funny. Any other questions?
Are you going to explain smart and dumb? Like, I know that it's an anagram, isn't it, for
yes. So
planning?
There's not really time to go into that in detail right now. SMART goals are basically specific goals, and dumb goals are big and challenging dream type goals. So I personally work from the big dream, the big goal, the something that looks unachievable or it challenges me, and then I break it down into SMART goals.
Thank you.
What was your highest score? Like, which one of those things did you score the highest on? You can put it in the chat or you can say it. It's totally up to you.
Oh, humility and vulnerability would be my highest score.
Great. Yeah, actually, Maria, I can see that.
Oh, thank you.
Mine would be the whole person at the moment, but that's just the stage I'm at.
Yep. Sure. Serena? Humility and vulnerability. What was your lowest score? Which one was your lowest score? Okay, yep. The whole person. Yeah. That's good. As far as the whole person goes, we all tend towards something. We all have natural strengths and abilities. So we will tend to be able to hear ourselves in that area. So some people are just stronger at recognizing their thoughts. Some people place great value on their thoughts, but much less on their physical listening. And in our culture, we're not really encouraged, although of course you can see that the tide is turning, but say in the last 20 years, the last, I don't know how many years of our culture, spirituality hasn't been something that we've been encouraged to think about. Action has always been more important than what's happening on the inside of us. But yes, definitely the tide is turning. So again, was there anything in there that you thought I could share that with somebody? Just that simple thing, that simple truth might just unlock a door for somebody, for them to muster some emotional strength or to bounce back from a situation. If there is, I encourage you to write it down, make a note of it, and don't be afraid to share it. All right, let's go on to the next one. Scaffolding. So I kind of came up with this word by myself. I thought I was so clever. And then a few years later, I discover it's actually a coaching term. I didn't know. I just thought it was so cool. The concept of scaffolding, of building structure around our lives that helps us in the process of building or repairing. Scaffolding is essential for emotional resilience. It doesn't matter how strong you are. It really doesn't. You can be solid. You can stand through a hurricane, an emotional hurricane. You can, like me, you know, with 5 years of, I don't know what it was, 8.5 years of cancer. Basically, my whole marriage, 13 years, there was the conversation of cancer from the time we were 3 months married, and then 8.5 years of actively fighting 5 different cancer battles. I stood through all of that. I laughed through all of that. I raised children. I moved countries twice. We had two different businesses. Oh, then I went on to single parent. Now, this is not a great big, there's people who've been through way more than I've been through. But the point that I'm saying is that I had this emotional strength. It wasn't so much emotional strength as it was denial. And part of me bringing scaffolding around me was the freedom, to give me the freedom to be human, to give me the basic human right of feeling that I could actually express my emotions. It was okay to say I'm not coping. Strong people, this is, you know, people who stand alone, people who stand like an island, you're not your best self. It's just not right. Purely because physiologically, psychologically, in every way, we are just not made to stand alone. We are community beings. So we need scaffolding, we need support, and one of that is our community. So these are my points around scaffolding. And again, I would ask you to score yourself 1 to 10. Forgiveness. Not just forgiveness of others, but forgiveness of self. Does it help the other person? If someone's hurt you and continues to hurt you, that forgiveness could be a daily process, just a letting go daily. You can't change other people. You can offer solutions, you can provide support, but at the end of the day, you can't change other people. But you can forgive, and the forgiveness does not help them, it helps you. Sometimes you can't remove yourself from those people. And I've had that situation where I haven't been able, I've chosen not to remove myself from those people because of they're a part of my essential family community. And I chose to not be the person that walks away. I recognize that those people have fractures, that they're doing their best, but they really don't benefit me much. So I do forgive on a regular level, or on a regular basis. I do it for me. I don't tell them I forgive you. I just say it for me. And that is actually a spiritual scaffolding. Forgiveness is very much a spiritual action. And when I have forgiveness as an everyday part of my life, yesterday I went to the bank. I couldn't believe the bank was closed. I had all this, one of my clients had paid in cash, quite a large amount, and I needed it to go in to pay my end of month bills, which started today. And the bank was closed in the middle of the day. What's with that? And there's only one branch for my bank in Cairns. So I was really very annoyed. Let's just say that. I really thought about, I just walked up to the glass. They totally ignored me. They were doing their thing. I was like, come on guys, what's going on? Open the doors, you know, I'm coming in, I got money. And they're like, oh, no, go away. You can't come. Apparently they had some breakdown. Wow, so cranky. I just actually really wanted to throw a little tantrum. But forgiveness is very much a part of my life. And I was able to recognize, I don't know their story. I don't know their story. Surely they're not just having a party at lunchtime and closing the bank. There's got to be a reason for this. So I was, even though it greatly inconvenienced me, I just, let it go. But then I thought there's something that I should do. There's the forgiveness, but then there's the response. So firstly, I forgave, and then I created a pause. I love creating a pause. Oh my goodness, I teach this to probably 100% of clients that come to me for whatever reason. Creating a pause is a brilliant scaffolding tool. Whatever it is, you take a deep breath, you distract yourself, you step away from the situation, you watch a funny movie. My husband was the first one who taught me about creating a pause, because when I got cranky, he'd say, go and have a sleep, love. I'm not going to solve this problem with you when you're tired and cranky. Go and have a sleep, and then we'll talk about it. Because I was, of course, very impetuous and wanted to solve everything immediately. And of course, I was always right. So, he'd send me off to have a sleep. Create a pause. That is a brilliant tool. If you've never done it before, be intentional about it now. Score yourself. What would you score yourself? How often do you take some deep breaths before you respond? Do you know how many things are not emergencies? Most of our life is not an emergency. So there's some good news for us. We are in a driven culture. It's an immediate culture, and it tells us we've got to give them a piece of our mind. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. So when I went to the bank and I was pretty peeved off, and I started thinking about, if this money doesn't go in the bank, how many late fees am I going to be charged, because, you know, my car payment's supposed to come out and my rent is supposed to come out, and that's a monthly rent figure, so it's not weekly, so it's quite an amount. And, you know, oh my goodness. But I just stepped back and I created a pause, and I said, oh, there's nothing I can do through a glass door anyway, so I'm just going to walk out. So I went and spent some of the money and bought myself some lunch. Whatever, I'll buy some lunch and I'll go home. And as I came home, I did the next thing, prioritizing. What is the most important here? Well, the most important here is that the money gets in the bank. That's important. So let's make a plan to get money in the bank. So I can go to my bank account at another bank and I can deposit the money, and then I can transfer it over. Oh my goodness, look at that. I took a deep breath, created a pause, and then my creative juices came in so I could think of a solution. It's still involved because it's going to take a couple of days for that transfer to happen, so I still may get some late fees. You know what? I prioritized myself. I said, I matter. I'm sure the bank had a really good reason for closing, but I matter. So I rang the information line, and I put in some feedback, and I said, this is what happened to me today, and I want you to tell me that was a great inconvenience to me, and now there's a possibility that I'm going to have fees. And I said to her, no, sweetie, it's not your fault. You just happened to be the poor girl who answered the phone. I'm not angry at you. I'm pretty annoyed that I'm inconvenienced, but I'm not angry. I just am prioritizing myself, and I want to have some outcomes. Prioritizing is a brilliant scaffolding tool. You're not always the most important. I'm not always the most important. In this situation, I chose to make myself a priority, because if I don't stick up for myself, nobody else will. There's other times where I haven't been able to stick up for myself, and I haven't been able to prioritize myself. But at what I do love to do is to ask somebody else to prioritize me. So if I'm in a situation where I can't stand up for myself, for example, you know, Dave, with these two people almost ending up in, you know, they're heading towards a punch-up fight, and you're like, well, I could just walk out of the room and I could just leave them to it. But you couldn't prioritize yourself, could you? You had to step in. So then you make sure that somebody else prioritizes you. What do? You go to somebody and you ask for some help, right? You say, I was pretty shaken up when these people started punching each other in my office. This is ridiculous. How, you know, is this what the situation is going to be like in this Cairns office? You know, well, I need to resolve this. So you ask somebody else to prioritize you. Sometimes it's not about people at all. Sometimes it's about, you need to prioritize time. You need to prioritize some learning. You need to prioritize a relationship. You need to prioritize rest. But I can tell you that if you are in an emotionally challenging situation, number one, if you don't forgive, you've tied one hand behind your back. And if you don't create a pause and you just do reactionary responses, you've tied another hand behind your back. And now what? You've just incapacitated yourself. And if you allow your emotions to get out of control, well, when I'm working with the children, I call that a volcano brain. And I talk to the children about how the cracks underneath the ground are the first signpost that something is not right. When we have a volcano, the first thing that happens is the cracks under the ground. The plates in the earth move, and it causes friction, and it comes up. And the next thing that happens in a volcano is that the heat starts to build up inside the volcano. So we call it the hot rocks. And we say that's called agitation. When I'm agitated, I know I'm agitated because I've lost peace. So that there's attunement right there. So I use attunement to recognize that I've lost my peace, I'm agitated, and the best way to remove the agitation and to come back to peace is to create a pause. I do not have to deal with the situation straight away. If I jump in, if I don't create a pause and I try to fix it without understanding or without skill set or without time or without the energy, then what I've just created, the next level is sensitivity. Smoke starts to come up out of the volcano, right? You always get warning. Well, not always, but majority of the time you get warning before the lava spills. You get a lot of smoke. And there's people that are, I know in PNG, there's a woman who's paid to sit and watch the volcano. And the minute she sees smoke, she's supposed to send the alarm. Actually, that woman, what she did was she saw the smoke and she ran away without telling everybody. So she got in a lot of trouble. So, yep, Serena, no problem. Yep, no worries at all. Thank you. Okay, so prioritizing is a scaffolding that assists. It comes after the pause. It allows you to be rational. How good are you at that? From prioritizing, once we know what we need to do, we can collect the resources to do it. There is a danger in collecting the resources before we do any of that other stuff. If we collect the resources first, we spend our time gathering knowledge, gathering more knowledge, gathering information. We end up with an amazing source of information, but if we haven't forgiven, if we haven't created a pause, and we haven't prioritized, all we have is knowledge. And who knows that knowledge is very insensitive and can be hurtful. It can actually, who loves that person who knows everything? Anybody love the person who knows everything? That before they've even heard about your story, they're trying to tell you how to solve it. Gotta love that one. Straight up, forgiveness has to come in, right? So it's wise, although we're constantly learning, but when we're talking about a specific emotionally challenging situation, let's use scaffolding to forgive, to create a pause and prioritize first, and then look at our resources. Repurposing is an awesome word. It's not in my top 4, but it's getting close because I love this word repurposing. It's pretty obvious what it means. It basically means using something that worked last time and tweaking it so that it works this time. Basically, that's repurposing. We can get the most out of our lives by repurposing. So the way that we do that and use it as a scaffolding tool is to reflect. And there's 2 things that I do every day of my life, through hard times, through good times. One is I celebrate. I don't wait for the end result. I celebrate all the way through. I celebrate when I forgive. I celebrate again when I create a pause. I celebrate when I've chosen my priorities, and I celebrate when I find the right resources. The other thing is reflection. So thinking about what I'm thinking about, thinking about what I'm doing, thinking about what I'm saying, thinking about how I'm feeling, thinking about the environment, thinking about the other people involved, reflection. And when I get to the repurposing stage, I think about the success or the challenges, the weaknesses in what I just did, how I dealt with that situation. And then I work out, oh, this is a pretty good tool. This is how I've actually built my whole coaching business, is by repurposing. I did a similar talk a couple of weeks ago, and Serena was there, and Serena said to me, Amanda, what have you studied? What degree do you have? And I said, I don't have any degree. And I told her the areas where I had studied, and I have studied, but actually the success of my business is that it's built on repurposing. I've just had a heck of a lot of experiences, and I've worked with a lot of people, and I take everything that I learn and I add it to my toolkit. And then I discover that there's some tools that just pretty much work in every situation. And I teach them now. And I just keep repurposing. And I can tell you that when I'm working with children and all of the children I work with have challenging behaviors. So when I work with them, I get a new child and I think, here's the one it's not going to work. This is going to be it. But in 7 years, I haven't met a child that it hasn't worked. I actually have 100% success with those children. And it's this repurposing. I don't just blanket take it and say it has to be done again, but I reflect on it and I think about that person and I use a lot of attunement. And then I take what worked before, tweak it, and I use it again in a slightly different way. I've really never heard anybody talk about repurposing as far as emotional resilience goes, but I tell you what, it takes a lot of stress off you. If you actually learn from your lessons, if you think about it, if you write it down, like you record it, if you reflect on it, if you talk about it, it's an amazing scaffolding tool. Now, you'll see here this little chart. You can use things like this. You can find resources, practical resources like this all over the internet for free. Or perhaps you might choose to do a course that teaches more about managing emotions, bouncing back, building resilience in a specific way to resource you. But I love this. This is what I mean about recording. And this is a resource to help you record. So here's the events that are happening. And here's the emotions that I'm feeling because of the events that are happening. And so how am I going to cope? I'm going to come up with a few different strategies. Some of this is going to be repurposing, and some of this is maybe brand new things I've never done before. But I'm going to keep my eyes on these 4 things, or 3 or 2 or whatever it is. I'm going to identify the emotions that I'm feeling, and then I'm going to counteract that with some strategies, some skills that are going to work for me. I may have to learn them. I may already know them. I may be able to go to someone who's really good at them and ask for help. And then down here, I'm going to write down what I can do to give myself the support that I need. What am I going to say to myself? One of the things I love to say is, this doesn't last forever. This won't last forever. Another thing you might like to say is, it's okay to ask for help. You might have to tell yourself that. Or you might say, I've done this before, I can do it again. What do you need to tell yourself that will build hope and courage in you to help you to build these skills, to silence these emotions and to pass through these adverse events? That's just a very simple tool. Not about changing direction, more about for example, forgiveness can be repurposed. For example, I might forgive somebody by telling them about it. I might go up to them and say, hey, I just want you to know, you were talking about me and you said that thing and then it got shared with my boss and then I'm in trouble. And, that was really, that hurt me. I was really disappointed. I just want you to know that I'm over it. I forgive you. It's not a big deal. It might be important to have the conversation, but it can be repurposed. And you might say, if I go to that person, I tell them that I forgive them, I might actually break the relationship. So it's better just to forgive them in my heart and to not say it. You might forgive and be able to forget, but you might forgive and not be able to forget. Sometimes it's good to forget, and other times it's actually very important to remember. If someone's broken your trust, I don't believe it's a good idea to forget. Forgive, yes, but it's going to look differently. Forgiveness is going to look differently. You're going to forgive, but you're not going to put yourself in a vulnerable situation with that person again. Now, they might prove They might grow 6 months later, 12 months later, 3 weeks later, they might grow, and they may prove through multiple actions that they're trustworthy. Awesome. That's the next step. But that's what repurposing means, using the same tool, the same technique. Sometimes, yeah, is that helpful? Does that answer that question? So you've scored yourself. Firstly, I'll ask you any other questions about any of those things. If you've got a question, just unmute and speak, or give me a thumbs up. And what about your scoring? What's your highest scoring scaffolding? You can pop it in the chat, or you can say it out loud. Prioritizing. Good. Susie, were you going to say something? Or are you putting it in the chat? What was your highest score? Okay. What's your lowest? Good. It's not as easy. It's, yep, always delete. Yep, great. I'm thinking about the times I've had to partner with really thoughtful people and they're so darn slow. It's the best thing ever for me. I would say one of my highest scoring is creating a pause too. So what's your lowest scoring one? It might be low scoring because you just haven't thought intentionally about it before. A fun thing to do is actually to write down all the different ways that you use to build up your strength. Okay. And then, yeah, this is repurposing. So you write down a strategy that you use. You might need to talk out things to build your emotional strength. And then you write down all the different ways that you can use talking to build your strength, how you can repurpose it. Sometimes it's talking to an upline. Sometimes it's talking to a friend. Sometimes it's talking to a stranger. Sometimes it's writing it down, not talking it to anybody. Sometimes there's this strategy that they talk about where you lock yourself in your own room. Well, you know, you close the door, you put yourself in your room without anybody there, and you just talk out loud. You just keep talking and you keep talking, and it generally takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And if you just keep on talking, you will hit a point where you go, oh my goodness, I didn't know that about myself. Or I didn't know that was the root cause of this situation. I've never done it. But it is a concept. So many different ways to use talking. Yep, responding differently to a situation that can't be avoided. Yep. Well, you know me, Rachel. I'm like, there's always a solution. You know what I'm like. All right, so no questions. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? So let's go on to the second last screen. Wisdom is one of my favorite things. Anybody else love wisdom? A lot of people are a fan of knowledge, and a lot of people are a fan of information. I am an absolute sold out fan of wisdom. I love wisdom. I define wisdom as interacting with knowledge, taking knowledge and interacting with it, wrestling with it, trial and error. This produces wisdom. There's two different types of wisdom, inner and outer wisdom. Inner wisdom is about knowing yourself. Inner wisdom, well, inner and outer wisdom are both constantly developing in our lives, but it does take intention. We don't learn wisdom without intention. If we learn it and we don't realize we learned it, we don't reuse it, we don't repurpose it, and therefore we lose the gift of wisdom. So inner wisdom is all of that stuff that you know about yourself at a really deep level, not just the I'm left-handed, I have a fiery temper, I like chocolate over cheesecake, you know, not those things, but things, your ikigai, your reason for being. I know that if I don't empower people, I'm lost, I float, I'm not grounded. I need to empower people. I am so satisfied when I do that. I know that about myself. I used to hate it about myself. I used to hate the fact that I was strong. I've said if another person tells me I'm strong, I'm going to show them just how strong I am physically. I didn't want to be told I was strong because I really wanted to be vulnerable with someone and I wasn't given the opportunity. But then I realized that I am strong. And I'm strong for very specific reasons because of my life is built on love and not fear. And it's because I'm I have a person with strong faith, and that faith has held me so many times. And therefore that's my inner knowing. It's my inner wisdom. What do you know about yourself? The wisdom to know the difference. That's it. Yep. What do you know about yourself? I'm going to give you a few minutes. What do you know about your deepest self? What do you know about your ikigai? You don't have to share it, but write it down. Those values that live or die for you, the things that you'll never, ever compromise. You may even like to score yourself on 1 to 10. How well do you truly know yourself at that deep, intimate level? How well do you know your investment into the world, what you do that changes the world around you? Not just what you do, but who you are. I know exactly what I bring into a room. Whenever I walk into a room, when I walk into one of our events, when I walk into a shop, into a car park, I know exactly what I bring to that space. I'm very, very aware of my inner wisdom. And I've learned how to protect it. And I've built the emotional resilience to allow me to use it freely. I've just taken on a new challenge, in fact, where I'm assisting and caring for a woman with severe acquired brain injury. It's way out of my field. And yet, oh gosh, my cat's coming. You're hungry, darling. And yet, because of my emotional capacity, I've got the strength to do it. And so I'm going in there to work with this, beautiful young woman who's got a very traumatic story. and I'm going in there with my inner essence. I know that I'm good at empowering. She's nonverbal. She can hardly walk. She's got all kinds of emotional, mental, and physical problems. And I'm not coming in there to give her a shower in the morning or to feed her breakfast, although I do those, I can do those things too. I do those things as well. But I go there with knowing exactly who I am and what I deliver. What's funny is that I'm actually using my skills to help all the other workers that work with her. And I'm enjoying it. I'm not exhausted by it. I'm really blessed that I'm proud of myself for stepping out and doing something new, not just new, but deeper. Inner wisdom allows me to do that. Outer wisdom is accrued knowledge. It's basically our cognitive wisdom. So what we accrue, what we understand through knowledge and experience, outer wisdom is processed by our brain and it produces capacity and strength. So what are your different resources? Where do you gather your outer wisdom from? Do you love to study? I told my parents when I was 20 and I finished my first diploma, I said, I'm going to be a lifelong student. I'm actually not going to get a job. I'm just going to enroll in another university course. And my parents very quickly burst that bubble and said, only if you pay for it, sweetheart. But in actual fact, I have been a lifelong learner my whole life because learning is so valuable to me and I'll keep on doing it. It'll never stop. So maybe it's studying, maybe it's in conversation, maybe it's in experiences. Some people cannot learn unless they do. That's really important to know. Some people can't learn unless they talk about it. They have an experience, but it's in the talking about it that they learn. Are you an adventurer? Are you cautious? Some of that is to do with your outer wisdom and tells you how you accrue knowledge. And then you turn that knowledge into wisdom by wrestling with it, by applying it in different situations. Out of that wisdom, out of that experience, you develop beliefs and values. And that's all a part of your inner wisdom. So your outer wisdom can convert into inner wisdom. The reason why I talk about wisdom is because it's very valuable when we go back to scaffolding and we look at prioritizing. When we need to prioritize, it's very helpful to have some wisdom to do that with. There's no cut and dried formula, I don't believe. I mean, you can use formulas for sure, and you will get a formula response. But if you use attunement, and you combine attunement with wisdom, then when you choose your scaffolding to help you build your emotional resilience and you prioritize about what's important, the most important things in that situation, the results that you have will be astounding. And I myself am committed to only astounding results. I've never been a fan of ordinary. So I like extraordinary results. That's what I offer my clients and that's what I offer myself. So wisdom is essential for me in picking my scaffolding and in helping with prioritizing. So I have to ask you, what's your takeaway tonight? What did you get out of tonight? I'd love it if you could unmute and tell us, or write it in the chat. Go, Rachel.
I think for me is what you just said about the inner and out of wisdom, because wisdom is not always explained. Like, I get it comes from experiences, but then I'm a different person than I was when I was 20. And the way I respond and the way I act. So that makes sense to me, how it becomes part of us.
Yep.
Being proud that it's part of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
I think you could say that probably wisdom, you know, and what Rachel was saying, it actually comes with age too, you know, and experience is, I mean, I remember many, many years ago where I really, really admired the way that this particular guy conducted himself, did business, you know, was always the heart of conversation, you know, and I had a lot of respect for him. And I said to him, you know, I said, I really admire you for that. I just can't do that. And he turned around and he said to me, you're joking. He said, because I think exactly the same about you, in that you do this and you do that. And I thought, there's no way. I did not have that personal insight, you know. And then so, you know, in learning, that was a good learning thing for me, that I didn't really know myself. And you learn that over a period of time, and you learn new things about yourself, and, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
Yeah, Rachel.
For me, it's also a confidence to know yourself as well as you get older, because when we're younger, when I was younger, you know, starting out in teaching, I've always felt like I was in a bit of a race, like it, you know, this person was better than me. But now I just know that everyone's kind of different and their own kind of paths. So for me, it's jumping out of the race and going, no, this is me now, and this is what I bring to the table. It's got nothing about what the next person beside me is doing, because there's a whole bunch of assumptions that can happen with that, that you don't realize what they're going through, and you've assumed it on them as well as they're assuming on you. So I just learned to jump out of the race, if that makes sense, in a positive way.
It's a great way of saying it. I love it. I have to say that there is definitely a journey that time produces, that only time produces. I totally agree with that. I will say, however, that I love to prove that younger people can have wisdom. And I do love that. And that's one of the reasons why I work with children, because I saw with my own children that I've saved them 10 years of their life by teaching them attunement, by teaching them scaffolding, and by teaching them about their identity and purpose. And now with my kids being, you know, 22, 20 and nearly 18, I go, oh my gosh, you guys this is awesome. How did I get such awesome, such mature kids, such wise thinkers, the way they make their decisions? And yes, they can be impetuous or impulsive. And I don't always see that as a bad thing. I think some of us should keep our impulsivity at times, right? But I do love to prove that children can have wisdom. And I'm working with 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 11-year-old. I've got an 11-year-old coming to me right now because he's really intensely concerned about what happens. He's messing around with spirituality, and he wants to know, he wants to resolve this. He recognizes he's at a more than a physical being, and his mum said, I think he needs to talk to someone else. I thought that was pretty cute. I'm not going to tell him. I'm just going to take him on a journey. Like, this is his journey. So I'm going to, you know, it's not for me to say, well, this is what happens and this is the traditional view. Come on, let's see what we can explore together. I'm quite excited about that. Yeah, so they're filtered, but definitely there is a way for our children to develop wisdom at an early age. And again, I'd have to say that so many of our children, when my children were left, you know, when their father died, that was so rare, you know, like that. They've got a playground in the school named after my late husband, because people just didn't die back then, you know, like that was crazy to die so young. And so my kids looked mature straight up because they went through incredible trauma. And someone came to me one day. She was a doctor and her husband was a, whatever he was, something. They had a lot of money. They lived in a lovely, beautiful home. And she said to me, Amanda, can you please tell me how to teach my child to be good with money? Because I see your children are so good with money. And I just looked at her. I was like, I don't know what to say to you. I said to her, maybe you could try being poor. Like, I didn't know what to say, but my kids were poor. So they valued every cent. Like, you know, so therefore they looked like they were good with money. Anyway, whatever. I would ask you just for 5 more minutes. I would love to just show you in 5 more minutes. I'd love to show you one of the courses that I run. And I'm not going to try to sell it to you. This is not a sell. This is a free webinar. But I rarely get the opportunity to show what I do, especially in the Ikigai network. And so do I have your permission to spend 5 minutes and just show you a course? Yes? All right. Thank you. And then we're done. Should be done right at 9 o'clock. So this is my toolkit program that I wrote, well, all my courses I wrote, but this has come out of, as I said, my study of life. It's an 8-week coaching program. So we have 8 weeks where you can do this individually or people can do it as part of a group. And I do have a group offer happening right, it's about to start. So with this toolkit, it's exactly what it sounds like. Develop strategies, learn skills, stick them in a toolkit so that you can use them for the rest of your life. So it's a foundational course where we cover identity, purpose, scaffolding. There you go, I said it. Identity, purpose, scaffolding, and intention are my 4 favorite words. So now I've said them all. Letting go, how to let go of limitations, whether that is forgiveness or whether it's thought patterns, belief systems, mind transformation. I use the Enneagram. I love the Enneagram, and I will do a personality profile. We look at the 7 segments of our lives as a whole. We also look at the 6 mind segments. So this is my 8-week program, and you do the 8 weeks of teaching, but you also get 2 one-to-one coaching sessions. I love it so much. The results are great. It's so much fun. A clarity of identity and purpose. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a toolkit. This of lifelong success. You get to be part of my closed Facebook group, and you get long-term support through messaging and emailing. So this is actually the foundation course that I have. I love to ask people to go through this course first before I take them on a one-to-one coaching journey. It actually costs around $1,700 to do it individually. Just do it yourself and me for 8 weeks, but it's much, much cheaper in a group, and it's normally $650 to do an 8-week program. And that's pretty good because it's less than $100 a week. But I've just had such a fun time with my daughter, and we put together, or she put together, my new website, which you can see there at the bottom of the page. And so I'm actually celebrating, and I love to give away. And my whole website, if you go and visit it, you'll see that I give stuff away. There's lots of stuff there that you can have as a giveaway. But this course, I'm actually doing it at 30% off at the moment. And so I would love to, I've gathered a couple of people together. I haven't really advertised it because I was waiting for tonight, but I'm at 30% off. It's $447. $447 for 8 weeks, and then 2 one-to-one coaching sessions. So it's like $50, just over $50 a week. So you can see right there who I am and what I do. I want to equip so that I'm not just equipping the person, but I'm also assisting in equipping community and also generations. I want to give value. I really deeply want to give you things that work. I want you to feel hope-filled. I want you to feel courageous. I want you to feel successful. And I want every person to have the right to access this type of stuff. So if you know somebody or you yourself are interested in this course, all you have to do is message me. If you know someone who you think would benefit from it, I would love it if you shared it. Because of that price, that's for a group course. That's not an individual journey. But if somebody wants to do it individually, I'll discount it as well. I want people to have it. It's my joy to do that. So thank you for sharing it with me. And feel free to go visit lifemattersconsultancy.com.au because you'll see photos of my daughter and stories, little videos about what I do, and you'll see the other courses that I have, including a dream school, which is about identity and wow, all the other stuff. So thank you for joining me tonight. David.
Yes, Amanda, what you say 8 weeks of coaching, is these what sort of time period? What are they done at night? Are they done during the day? What?
So when I ran this course last year, I actually decided to run 2 at once. So I ran a day group, which was face-to-face, and then I ran a night group, which was by Zoom. At the moment, with the people that I've got who want to do this course, we're looking at nighttime, and the session will go for an hour and a half. There'll be no more than 10 in the group. So it's like a 7 till 8:30. I like to start on time and I like to finish on time. It's not like tonight, where tonight is a majority of me talking and teaching. It's not about that. You actually get a workbook and we actually work in session. We wrestle with the information in the session. There's all kinds of, you know, I've designed a few different things, and so there's worksheets and questions and yes, there's teaching, but the majority of it is hands-on. And then, of course, there's homework, because can you really change your life in an hour and a half a week? Not really. The benefit of the program is that you actually walk through it. So you're doing that with other people, right? And that's why the 2 one-to-one coaching sessions, which go for an hour each, are so valuable, because I didn't offer it like that before. This is the first time I've actually done it that way. It used to be a 10-week course, but I turned it into an 8-week course and then offered those 2 coaching sessions. And those sessions alone, it's like usually $180 each. And I can tell you that I put my guts into investing in those sessions. So you're getting, it's really good quality, really good value.
Amanda, when would you be looking to commence this course?
I'd actually really like to commence next week.
Okay.
I have it down to start next Wednesday evening from 7 till 8:30. There is one person who wants to do the course and doesn't want to start for 2 weeks. So I basically are just collecting the people who are interested, and it's just majority rules.
Okay, thank you.
This offer it's been on the website. A few people have said, like I said, I haven't really advertised it. I'm basically looking at taking it off the shelf in about 2 days, because I need people to make a decision so that we can get started. So if you do know someone who's interested, or you yourself are interested, please let me know straight away. You don't have to pay straight away, but you need to let me know straight away. And if you can't pay it in full, then you will need to put down a deposit so that I know that your intention is solid. But yeah, it's a decide quickly kind of thing. Listen, if you've got any other questions, just message me, or you can, when I get off the chat now, you're welcome to call me and have a one-to-one chat. It's just me and the cats. I got plenty of time to talk. So feel free if you want to talk about it. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. It's like 9:05. And thank you. I've enjoyed tonight. Have you enjoyed tonight?
Yeah, it's been very good.
Okay.
I thought I might send my 2 fighting factions and see how you cope.
Yeah, so I should separate them, right? David, I actually do offer this program. I do offer it for the workplace.
Yeah.
It can be, yeah. So that's a whole different, ball game, but I do love to go in. And I have been asked, I've done a couple of different places where I speak to the heads of department and I train the heads of departments in these kinds of strategies. And then they use that with in their departments, and it's builds beautiful cohesion. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's food for thought for the future.
Sure.
To personalise it. Personalise it to the workplace.
I love to do that. Yep.
Okay. No, it's been very, very good. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to stop the recording if I can find it. There it is. And again, you're welcome to message me, or if you want to call me for a short chat after this.